Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here and welcome back to the railway. And today I'm going to do two reviews, which is a little bit strange, and they are going to be of these two LNER 060 locomotives. Both of them you've seen in the last couple of weeks during various running videos and whatnot. First of course is the lovely J83, which is the one that John from Chams123 kindly gave to me. And so I'm going to be reviewing that. That one's not boxed sadly, but this one, the Lima J50, which I've also discussed, is boxed, and I'm going to be doing that one as well. So yeah, two J locos, J50 and J83. I do think this Lima one is very unusual indeed, very bizarre. I have looked at the real J50s. In fact, here they are now. This is a picture of one in real life, and they do have that very unusual shape, don't they? It's very, very bizarre, but yeah, it isn't just a Lima cock-up, they are genuinely that strange. So speaking of that one then, we're going to get that one unboxed and reviewed first, and then we'll move on to the J83. I didn't think it was worth doing two separate videos on these locos because they are so similar, and so obviously I'm not going to spend quite so long on reviewing these because they're only small and there's no tenders to worry about, so the video should be about as long as usual, if not slightly longer. Alright, so let's get this out then. The J50 by Lima. I think this is my first Lima review, possibly. I might be the second, I'm not sure. I should probably do some more. But yeah, there it is. Let's get it out. You'll notice actually there's a very weird but very large space here, which obviously is hidden by this section of the box. I don't know if it would have come with any detail in that section. I wouldn't have thought so. Or instructions or something, I'm not sure, but mine didn't. So. A bit of a waste of space there, who knows why. Right, let's get her out then. And it's really not a very bad loco at all. It really does look quite smart. I thought it looked quite, well, naff to be honest. But when I looked at the real J50s, like I showed you a second ago, it is you know, quite a likeness, isn't it? So yeah, more on that in just a second. Let's get her up against the white background and let's have a good close look. So there she is then, the elegant J50 locomotive. This one's obviously from the LNER, as I said earlier, number 8920. And the first thing to me that was quite obvious is this sort of very hand-painted look that it's got. Obviously I'm not saying it's hand-painted, but if you just look closely at the certain details, like the LNER for example, if you look closely you can see that it's not particularly sharp. It almost looks weathered in that the quality of it is quite, not poor, but just a little bit not quite as sharp as what we're used to, I suppose. And it's not just the text, the white stripes that are around the body, it's slightly clumsily done I suppose in certain places, and this was brand new when I got it, and I've certainly not you know, done anything to it to make these white lines get worn. So this is, you can pretty much guarantee that this is how it would have been when it was made, obviously being a bit of an older loco. But yeah, those sorts of things are certainly quite noticeable when you see it up close like this. Having said that, I think, like I said a moment ago, it is quite elegant, the way it looks, the way it sits there, looking pretty cute, as I'm sure you'll agree. The detail is really not abysmal. It's obviously not close to modern standards, but it's certainly not terrible. You can see that there's handrails here and there, again with the slightly worn paintwork, or sloppy paintwork, whatever you want to call it, which is nice. And you've also got small brass plates on there, which presumably would have had certain information on them, but unlike other loco companies, there's no text on these, which is legible. Which is, I suppose, a key difference between Lima and, say, Hornby. I suppose Hornby did still have the detail edge, even in those days. And speaking of detail, there is, you know, not as many rivets as you might expect. There are a few thrown in there, especially just around the cab windows there, and on the buffer beam. The buffer beam's pretty nice, actually, having said that. The cab, of course, while we're talking about it, doesn't have any glazed windows or anything like that. It doesn't have an interior because, sadly, that's where the mechanism, the gears and the motor are housed. Which is a bit of a shame, but it's just the way it was made, so unfortunately that is the place with the most space, so that's where the motor went, presumably. But yeah, that's not too much of a problem. But while the handrails look like they are moulded on, they don't look like they're separately fitted to me. They are very close to the bodywork. There is the two safety valves, which do appear to be separately fitted and don't look like plastic to me. So that is quite nice. I think it needs it, to be honest, to pull it up a little bit on the detail. Let's talk about the buffer beams then. The one at the front is probably the best one to talk about. It has got this almost chain-like coupling on the front, but it isn't functional. You couldn't really use it. Whereas some of the other models, mainline for example, would have a hook on there which you could use for coupling. But that one looks to me like it's entirely for model purposes only. I've talked about the rivets already, but if we look at the buffers, they aren't sprung, but as I always find, they seem quite realistic to me in some ways. They do look pretty nice actually. And of course right next to it there you've got a set of steps, which is very nice. Extra bits jutting out like that tend to improve the realism for me, I think, especially while she's running around. It's just more to look at, I suppose. The rear of the loco is quite interesting to look at. Around the bottom you've got a similar buffer beam, but the back of the coal bunker is fairly plain. There's not an awful lot to see there. But if we look up slightly, the coal, as you can see in the bunker there, is pretty nice. It's not too bad. You can tell that the pattern on there is quite recycled. It's quite uniform, but it is quite fine, which I like, and it isn't too glossy. It may look glossy on the camera, but it really isn't too bad at all. And of course on the windows into the cab there you can see the sort of grille effect that they've put on there, but again without any glass. But I suppose that does make up for things a little bit. Along the top of the boiler then, and around the the tanks, is what makes this loco a little bit unusual, I think. It is quite flat, isn't it? And of course it's got a slight slope. It's just, yeah, it's quite a simple shape, isn't it? Which is why I thought Lima may have, modified it and sort of made it their own. But no, that is an accurate shape. I don't know if I like it. It's a bit weird, isn't it? Yeah, it's certainly a bit like a flat expanse in a way. And it also makes the front of the boiler look a bit strange, the smoke box door. It almost looks slightly overweight, doesn't it? But yeah, it's certainly an interesting look, and apparently Hornby have made a new one as well, so it'd be nice to check that one out. But anyway, since I've just mentioned the smoke box door, we'll go around and take a look at that. And it's quite detailed actually, perhaps more so than the rest of the model. It has got its rivets on there, and it's got the handle, looks pretty good. And again the running number, which normally is omitted from models with limited detail like this. But no, this one's got it, which is pretty cool. So if we look at the running gear then, this is quite a whistle-stop tour. You can see that the valves are clearly internal, so there's nothing to see there really. But the one serious drawback with this model, which I really dislike, is the way in which the linkage works. As you can see here, yeah, I think the camera just about shows it. You can see that the linkage is attached here and here underneath the steps. But the centre set of wheels, if we lift it off the track slightly and turn them round, is, I can describe it I suppose as like a dummy set of wheels. It's not attached to any linkage, which isn't obvious while she's running round the tracks, but it's just a bit rubbish, isn't it, to be honest. I've never seen it done before. Even Triang didn't do that with their engines. I suppose it probably makes it run a little bit better, having to turn less wheels, and it does have a traction tyre on it, so it's not as if traction's really a problem, but really it's just quite toy-like, isn't it, really? It is exactly what you see on plasticky toy trains, not really what we're used to on, double O gauge railways, without trying to sound like a snob, but you know what I mean. It's a little bit unnecessary to have omitted that detail, because, I don't know, it does look a bit rubbish when you notice it. I'm sure you might not have noticed it, but now I've pointed it out, it does look a bit naff, doesn't it? But yeah, once we get to running, I suppose you can decide for yourself whether it looks acceptable or not, which it does, I think. But yeah, it's just a niggle, isn't it? It's not great. Okay, well that's that then. That's a little review on the J50. Now we'll move on to the J83 before we get the pair running together. Alright, let's do it. Okay, so there we are then, the beautiful J83, number 8477, fantastic loco. This is one that you just can't help but fall in love with. And already you can see that despite it being probably quite a bit older than the Lima model, it's just quite superior. Not in any particular sense, but just generally, it's got a lot more character to it, I feel. It's quite difficult to explain. The detail is better, I suppose, but it's not necessarily that makes me prefer her. Now, before I get on to reviewing her in more detail, I will just say that she is sadly missing the steps, which are normally attached here and there. And sadly, we didn't realise they were missing until after she arrived. But it isn't particularly noticeable. and I think unless you're looking for it, you're not going to notice it anyway. So it's not a big deal. I just thought I'd say that at the start, just in case you were wondering how on earth the drivers were supposed to get onto the damn thing. But yeah, that's the only issue with this one. Other than that, it's absolutely fantastic condition. So the LNER text actually isn't as good as usual. If we look, it is a little better than the Lima one, but it's still a little faded. But this one comes across more as weathered rather than just bad, which is a bit better, I suppose. And it's got a lot of rivets in the same places as the J50 actually, around the side of the cab there, just like before. And on the buffer beam, there's really not a whole lot else, not even on the cab roof. But having said that, there is quite a lot more detail on this one, not only with the separately fitted parts, but with the livery too. Of course, the LNER trademark white stripes, which the J50 didn't have. And of course, you've got the two safety valves there, just like before. This time we've got a whistle in addition as well. The whistle on the J50 was just a very small moulded piece, which was actually attached to the front of the cab. Which really wasn't too good at all, but this one is superior in that sense. I do like the shape of this loco a lot more as well. As you can see, the tanks are a lot shorter, so perhaps this loco in real life wouldn't have been able to run for as long. It has got a noticeably smaller coal bunker too, which is quite interesting, I suppose. But I think this is just a lot cuter loco, to be honest with you, in my opinion. Let me know what you think. So let's go around the front then. Of course, the smoke box door on this model is a lot more simplified. There's no running number on there, but having said that, if there wasn't in real life, there certainly won't be on the model. But you have got the handle on there and the hinges. It is very simple, but quite typical of Triang, so no points deducted there. The buffer beam is quite nice again. You have got the little hole for the vacuum pipe, presumably, or the chain link coupling if you want it. With loads of rivets on the buffer beam, as we often see. Of course, these buffers aren't going to be sprung. They are quite large buffers, noticeably, but they are nice and realistic, as we always seem to find. Right, on with the coal then. This coal is excellent. The texture is really nice. It's all quite varied, unlike the J50, and it looks pretty realistic, not bad at all. There's no grille on the cab windows anywhere. It could be prototypical or it could be just a price cutting thing, but either way it's quite a lot older loco, and perhaps fine detail like that was quite hard to muster back in the day. And around the back of the loco is not massively detailed, not that it needs to be really. The buffer beam, or thereabouts, has got a few gaps in it where the loco chassis will hook onto the body, as did the J50. But you've also got a few little moulded ridges there, which help to make it look a lot more textured. But overall, it's a very cute loco. The livery is absolutely gorgeous. If it's an LNER loco, for me, it's got to have the white stripes on the boiler. I mean, I don't mind the white stripes around the, if you had them around the tanks or whatnot, like the J50 did. But for me, if they're on the boiler, I just, for some reason, I love it a whole lot more. But yeah, hopefully that's a good close look then. Two very nice logos, don't get me wrong. I'm sure they'll look nice together. I'm going to be using all my LNER coaches today. Two different rakes, as you know, one of the old set, one of the slightly more modern ones. But yeah, let's get them together, let's do some coupling, and then get them going together. Alright, let's do it. Okay, so there's the J50 then, all railed up and ready. She's got the four of the older teak coaches ready there, which I suppose is quite good for her, since she's effectively an 040 without that centred wheel being the driven one. So that's not too bad at all. There's the J83 as well, 8477. She's got the five teak coaches, which are slightly heavier, slightly more modern, and she's obviously an 060 through and through, but she'll do that with absolutely no problem and could probably pull a fair bit more. But first let's get the J50 coupled up, and then we'll see how she goes when she's running. Okay, let's give it a go. Alright, so this loco actually ran in the LNER running day. Now if you remember that running session, she was actually not a very good runner at slow speeds, and that's still the case as far as I'm aware. So I'll try and make this as gentle as possible, but it's going to be a bit rough unless I'm able to stop her just at the right moment. But yeah, let's give it a try then, see if I can eat my words. See, I can't do it slow. Alright, there we go. Right, I think I'll back her up a little bit more, just so that she's out the way. And we'll do the same now with the J83. Okay, ready to go then. And she's just a fantastic loco. She's just a great all-rounder. Look at that. Such a crawl for that XO3. Or XO4 it might be, if it's an older one. I think it is. Right, well, she's coupled up. I'm just checking. Yes, she is. So we'll start her off then, and we'll get them both going together. Okay? Slowly does it to start with. Okay, now I'll speed her up now she's out of focus. And on with the J50. Okay, off she goes. Yeah, a tiny bit of wheel slip there, but nothing too serious. Okay, alright, let's watch them on their journeys then. I'll speed up that J50 in a moment, unless you like it going slow. So yes, you'll have to let me know which is your favourite in the comments. I think you can probably guess which one mine is. Yep. They're not a bad pair, are they? Okay, well I'll stop the J83, I think that one is there, and I'm going to reverse the J50 back actually, rather than wait for her to go the whole lap. There we go. Take this brightness down a touch. I've upgraded the camera, I don't know if you can tell. So I've now got manual control, which is perfect for while I'm going around the room filming. So let me know if you noticed any difference, and let me know which one of these two was your favourite. But for now, everybody, I'll say thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed seeing these two little girls having a little ride around the railway. It's been a miniature LNER day, I suppose, today, hasn't it? But yeah, not bad. I do love having the tank engines out, having a run round. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. If you'd like more, please go and visit the Facebook page or the Twitter page at facebook.com/samstrains or twitter.com/samstrains, as you can see below. But for now, everybody, take care, and I'll see you very soon. Cheers, everybody.